So welcome everybody. So this is a first in a series of vodcasts that I'm going to be doing with Alan, and I hope I say this right, from Cavetta Consulting.
Yes, very good, very good.
Thank you. I've only practiced that a couple of times before we came on. So Alan works in an industry sector that possibly not many business owners know about, but it's an industry sector which can be very viable and interesting to business owners. And again, this podcast is all about helping business owners grow with their information and grow their knowledge to help them grow their business. Because as we always say, you don't know what you don't know. So I am going to hand over to Alan. The series is going to be called The Art of Tax Relief That's Not in an Invoice. So I will hand over to you, Alan.
Thank you very much. So those who don't know me, my name's Alan Cadden. I'm a chartered surveyor. I'm also a fellow of the Association of Tax Technicians. And over the last 7 years, I've managed to find £121 million of tax deductible items. Now, the one thing that two things that these had in common is, one, they were actually contained within a commercial property. So not somewhere you live, but anything from an office to a holiday let to a care home, lots of different ones. And the other thing was they're not stated in an invoice. And as a result of that, the accountants have difficulty claiming them.
Okay.
Why? So the obvious question is, now with the tax relief I find, it's actually called Capital Allowances. It's actually been around since Victorian times, but only 30% of people who own or lease a commercial property that can claim it do claim it.
Okay, so I'm just going to stop you there. So for clarity, you don't actually have to own this commercial property. It could be somebody who's leasing a commercial property.
You could lease a commercial property. For example, when you think of it, you could have, most shops are let. You'll take a lease in a shop and you'll go and fit it out. In that instance, you could look to claim capital allowances in your fit out costs.
Okay, so what about if I owned a pub? So I was leasing a pub, or a coffee shop or a restaurant?
Well, for the leasing of it, now if you go into a pub, obviously there'll be fixtures and fittings already there. Yeah. It might have a bar, it would have the pumps, the toilets, the kitchens, and most of them would be there. But anyway, if you're talking about leasing, you would have to be putting in new fixtures. So you need to have the lease and also spend money in putting in fixtures and fittings. Okay. And if you leasehold, if you buy a building, then what you're spending the money on is you're spending money in the building, but part of that is attributable towards fixtures and fittings like toilets, lights, distribution boards, carpets, blinds, all these sort of things contained within it are attributable. So you're spending the money and actually buying it, and that's how it sells in.
So you couldn't be a landlord and do this. You've got to be the actual business owner.
Well, landlords, property investors actually do claim it. Like some of the big investment firms will buy or refurbish a building and claim capital allowances. It might be someone who owns the office and then lets it to other people. So as long as you have what you call the relevant interest, and what that means is you either own or lease the property. So there's three conditions to claiming allowances. One, you have the relevant interest, you own or lease it. You use it in your business. It can't be your stock, so a developer who's selling a building wouldn't claim it. And the other thing is you must have, it can't be a home. It can't be somewhere where you physically live, unless it's a care home or something like that. So residential properties, buy-to-lets, anybody who flips property can't claim this.
Okay, yeah, that's definitely made it a lot clearer. Perfect.
So usually the biggest question is why your accountant why my accountant not dealt with this?
Okay, so why should somebody come to you instead of an accountant?
Well, accountants will normally claim tax relief which is on an invoice. So desk, chairs, computers, it's no problem to them whatsoever. They don't need my help. But when it comes to a building which they've either bought or it's been fitted out, they have some problems where they do need them help. And in fact, the Inland Revenue in their manuals, there's something called HMRC manuals where they tell you about claiming taxes, and capital allowances are a big one for them. They actually say that it's difficult when an asset is incorporated in a building for the accountants to claim. That is the biggest difficulty they have. Why is it difficult? Well, what I do is I'm not an accountant. So I don't deal with taxation returns. I don't deal with books. I don't deal with Companies House. What I am is a chartered valuer. And valuation is a completely different sport, a different qualification, completely different from what the accountant does. The way to look at it, and why has a valuation element, the way to look at it is, say you're buying a building. Now, to get the tax relief when you're buying a building, you've got to do certain things. In fact, if I might ask you, actually, just an illustration, part of it is you've got to do what they call a replacement cost. You've got to know how much that building is going to cost to replace without an invoice. So do you go to an accountant for that, or a surveyor?
A surveyor?
That's right. How about valuing a piece of land?
Pardon?
How about valuing a piece of land?
A surveyor.
A surveyor. And you need these elements in order to extract the tax relief. So the accountants can't do it. They're not trained in valuation. The other item is, I'm sure you've had some work done either at a house or a property at some stage. Now, I don't know about Liverpool, but in Glasgow, builders don't tend to give a nice fine level of detail in their quotes. They tend to give a single line, what it's going to cost you at the end of the day, which sometimes is what most people care about. But within that quote, there's things that qualify for tax relief. There's some that don't, and some qualify at different rates. But with the poor accountant, how do they extract that tax relief? For me to do it, I've got to count the items. I've got to measure them. I've got to price them in line with how an architect would price it, using books like this with lots of different prices in them. So it's a completely different art. And that is why the accountants need our help to claim it. And in fact, accountants are my biggest referral partner. 90% of my work comes from accountants.
Yeah, I was going to say that was going to be my next question. So do you work alongside accountants? So, for example, if somebody came to them, they could offer, the service that you, so capital gains allowance, but they would...
Capital allowances. Which
Sorry.
No, actually, you raised a really important point there. A big part of why people don't claim is they don't know. And more often than not, people get capital gains tax mixed up.
It's so easily done because it's just, and I'm somebody who doesn't know, and I've made that mistake. And I think it's because that's what we understand and we hear about the most. The service that you offer isn't something that's necessarily promoted and out there. So, so if an accountant thought there was a possibility to claim some tax relief, they would come to somebody like you, and you would work alongside them and their client.
Yes. But the difficulty the accountants have is explaining it to their client and why. And what we try to do is, we don't talk as a company about turning buildings upside down and shaking them or refunds. What we talk about is, keep it simple. It's a valuation. It's a different element they need. An independent, robust valuation of your tax relief actually gives, more kudos to your tax return.
Yes.
It makes the case stronger.
Yeah, and it makes it easier to understand what you're doing as well. And that's one of the things we're always promoting on the directorschoice.com. You need to speak to an expert to help you, because an accountant with the greatest will in the world, as you've explained, could bumble their way through this, but they wouldn't be doing a 100% clear job like somebody like yourself would, because they don't understand exactly what they're meant to be doing, which is why they then need to speak to an expert. It's
also about understanding property, because when you think about it, right, if you take a light fitting, anybody can go to B&Q and look at the price of a light fitting. So where's the difficulty? Well, that light fitting goes in a ceiling. You've got to cut that out. There's a wire behind it. It goes to the distribution board. So you've not only got different elements you need to understand, but also how long is it going to take the electrician to do that? Time is money, and that is where it all comes in.
Have you got any sort of examples or case studies you could just give a quick synopsis of to help people kind of understand?
Yes.
I sometimes think if you can relate it to something that, a business that somebody might be in, or an experience somebody's had, it might help the service become more relatable to them.
We have a job, it's actually kind of a nightmare, which is construction of a children's nursery.
Okay.
And what has happened is they've had the drawings, and they've had their team of builders and in-house and people that have no interest to do it. And they've said, right, go ahead, just give me the receipts, I can put it in my accounts. and I had a drawing, and that's all I had.
Okay.
All I had. And what I had to do was firstly see what was there that could be claimed, find out what the gaps were, and then overcome that problems. I wasn't fortunate enough to have a drawing, so I had to go to planning to get the drawing.
Okay.
I had to go on a site survey and physically count up every single item on there to do it. I had to measure the property as well, and that allowed me as a surveyor to get back to first principles to calculate what it would cost those elements in the building, what it would cost to replace them, and build the building up on paper, and then subsequently get a hold of the tax relief to do it.
Okay, and I suppose the big question is, how much tax relief did they gain from that, from you doing that?
Well, I wouldn't disclose exact figures because obviously that's confidential for the clients. But by using our service, by using any chartered valuer, you should be financially better off. And I wouldn't do company ethic. We get two ethics, well, with many ethics, but two main ones are: we wouldn't do a job if they felt the accountant can do it, and we wouldn't do a job unless it's going to make that client financially better off in year one.
Okay, so this is a really good way of releasing cash flow from your business that's there already, which is, you know, something with the way everything is at the moment. So this is October 2022 for anybody who's listening. A lot of business owners are looking to release cash flow without taking any additional debt on board. And this could be a way that they could do it. Is that right, Alan? You
make a really good point in terms of cash flow. What we can do is by freeing that up, we've got two choices. If you don't claim your capital allowances, which you're entitled to, you give more money to HMRC that you don't need to.
Okay.
If you claim capital allowances, then obviously you save that amount of money. It's not a case of, not in some cases you can get refund, but most cases you're not paying it in the first place. And you can use that cash to reward yourself. We've all got businesses, we all work hard, retain staff and other things. You made another important point. See, during COVID, when COVID started, I thought as a business, well, we can't survey property, what we're going to do. And my phone went red hot for 2 years. Whereas business owners at the time, they go, I did this refurbishment in 2011. I've not got a lot of detail. I bought this office building in 2008. People had bought serviced furnished holiday lets years gone by and never claimed.
And how long have you got to claim? Is there a cut-off point? So a number of years, or?
No, if you're buying a second-hand commercial property after 2014, you generally need to have everything wrapped up in 2 years.
Okay.
That's in the contract. There's fixtures rules that come in. If you've done refurbishment works, then as long as as long as you still own or lease the property, you spent the money, and you're still using it, then you can go back to when Adam was a boy. I mean, we've got claims we've done since 2000. In fact, one of the ones we got, somebody did building works in 2003.
Wow.
And Shelter's been there since 2015. So the maths doesn't add up. But what happened is they changed accountants in 2018, and a new accountant asked to see the valuation, and it wasn't there. And he realised that client for 15 years had been paying too much tax.
Wow. And
we were able to go back. Now, the one thing about that case, which was interesting, which shows the skill a surveyor has, we had the drawing. We knew what they'd spent. So you could physically tell what they'd spent. We had, we had those details, but we didn't have the contractor went bust. So we didn't have a nice bill of quantities or anything like that. So we had to go from first principles and estimate it. Now, we were doing that job in 2018, and not in 2003. So how could we do that? Well, we use our skills as surveyors to go back in time using things they call tender price indices, which I'm being a bit technical now, but the point is that it can be done.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm sure you're on their Christmas card list for a long time now. Right. Well, that was a great overview of what you do and how you can help business owners. I know on the next one, we're going to go more into the technicalities of how it works and how you can help people. But I think you will have given a lot of business owners food for thought. If you're interested in finding out more, you can find Alan on thedirectorschoice.com. If you go to the accountancy area of the platform, and you can find his profile through there, I will put a link underneath where the vodcast is posted as well, which will take you directly to Alan. But I'd like to thank you very much for your time, and I look forward to speaking to you on the next one.
I look forward to it. Thank you very much, Sam.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.